It was a fine day for vengeance, Un thought. She stood near the prow of the lead ship, making herself visible so Gorm would see her coming. Her small fleet of Carves was bearing down on their prey, an encampment of Vikings who dared to ransack a coastal village under her own protection. Un called Fleshweaver. Her spear struck with the precision of a weaver's needle, so the people said, and Un had no intention of dampening their image of her. As much as she loved fighting, some of her favourite raids were when the enemy surrendered at the mere mention of her name. Trivga joined her at the prow, hand on the hilt of his sword. He'd been looking forward to this day, she knew. His blade was thirsty, and Un had a feeling it would get its fill. Un saw that indeed her fleet had been spotted. Gorm's men were rushing all around their encampment, caught completely at unawares by Un's attack.
Looks like they know what they're in for, Un! See how they scramble to muster a defence!
Not one of Gorm's men will live to see the sunset, Trivga. I shall make sure of that. Gorm had made his last mistake a few weeks hence, when he'd so foolishly raided a village called Bailund that was under Un's protection. The people of Bailund had been resistant to Gorm's demands, resulting in a massacre that stained the beach with blood. Un could see from Gorm's camp the kind of leader he was. The camp was shoddy and unkempt. A drunken Viking slept in the middle of a pathway despite the activity of his comrades. These men were not prepared for her attack. But Gorm himself wasn't a man to take lightly, Un knew. The gods had blessed him with strength and vitality, even if he squandered it all. She would have to watch herself when she confronted him. Gorm exited his longhouse, drawing his sword, and began to shout orders. As the boats came in range, Gorm's men prepared to fire.
Ready your longbows, men. Skewer these swine before they come aground.
Gorm's men obeyed, retrieving their hunting bows and repurposed for defence. Un had to give it to him. It wasn't a bad plan. Stand firm!
Take cover! The death rain comes!
Un's men did the best they could to shield themselves from the rain of arrows. She would lose some, no doubt, but if they could make the shore, Gorm was in for the punishment he deserved.
Loose!
Evade! At Un's signal, the boats made evasive manoeuvres, riding the crashing waves to present broadsides to the volley, then tacking back in to close the distance. They sliced through the waves, expertly amid the storm of death. The first volley ripped through the air, past an unconcerned Un. Arrows slammed into the salt-stained wood. Only one of her men was hit. Arrows rushed past Un's head. She felt their cutting wind. A single shaft fell toward her, and casually she knocked it aside with her long spear. She heard Trivga cheer from behind her. Gorm's face contorted with rage at the ineffective volley.
Kill the woman. Half the spoils to the man who slays the Fleshweaver.
Un's boats ran aground and her men poured over the sides. For the people of Bailund! Axes, swords and spears rent guilty flesh. The blood of vengeance flowed freely as Un's men repaid the violence at Bailund. Un weaved through the battle, threading her spear like a needle through anyone who came too near. She strode with a singular purpose, to find and kill Gorm. Gorm! Show yourself, coward! Gorm couldn't believe his eyes. The fury of Un was known far and wide, but it was so swift, so efficient, more furious than he had imagined. He fled. You will pay for the slaughter at Bailund, Gorm. Face your death bravely and I'll make it quick. Gorm skidded around the corner of a building and came to a stop, gasping breaths. Un's second, Trivka, stood before him, grinning like all the world had been handed to him on a platter.
Hello, swine. You won't escape her. You know that.
No.
Gorm fled the man, unwilling to be caught between Trivka and Un, having to fight them both. Gorm's heart pounded even as he cowered in a run-down cabin. He knew this reprieve would be short-lived. Un's voice called to him from outside. You only delay the inevitable. Un strode down the road, eyes peeled for Gorm and any other resistance.
Die, Fleshweaver!
One fool attacked her right flank, but he was too slow. Un stuck him like a ball and the man fell aside, gurgling blood. Your men are dying, Gorm. Only pain will be the reward for your cowardice. How do you fancy being tied to a stake and left alive for the crows? Gorm struggled to bar the door to his hideaway, but it was too late. Trivka had caught up to him. A mighty kick and the door burst inward. Gorm fell back, sword levelled at Trivka.
You have one chance to survive this, pig.
Trivka drew a second sword, whose blade gleamed with a thin green film.
Trigva, no. Please. I was only...
Ha ha! Here, take this. You'll need it.
Trivka tossed the blade to Gorm, who caught it. He shot the other man a bewildered look, then a grunt of insult.
What? I have my own sword, fool.
Trivka smacked the crown of Gorm's head with the flat of his own blade.
The blade is poison. All it will take is one nick.
Gorm's puzzlement screwed up his face.
What?
Gorm!
She's slow to block swipes from the left. If Un does not leave this shore alive, I promise that you will never see me again.
Trivka held Gorm's eyes for a long moment, as long as he dared to wait, making sure the fool understood his intent. Then he turned and left, closing the broken door behind him. Gorm stared at the poisoned blade. It was quite a dishonourable way to fell one's rival. And yet, his fear of Un made the use of poison strangely palatable. He was puzzled though. Trivka.
He betrays her.
Emboldened by Trivka's mutinous intent, Gorm mustered the dregs of his meagre courage. He opened the door of his hideaway and stepped into the road. Un turned a corner to find Gorm waiting. His sweaty face and shaking frame only aroused more contempt in her heart. Perhaps you're not the coward I thought. Still, your death will not be glorious.
Come for me then.
Un obliged him, closing the distance more quickly than he was prepared for. She feinted to the left with her spear point. Gorm took the bait and tried to slice her with the poisoned sword. Un was too fast. In a flash, her spear found Gorm's eye socket and slid in with ease.
Ah! My eye.
Around them, the flames had risen. Gorm's men had already lost the swift battle. All that would remain of their camp and ill-gotten goods was ash. Un held Gorm at spear point, watching as he writhed and screamed about his ruined eye. Had I the time to extract all the pain you deserve, Gorm, please believe I would take it. But I'm afraid I must be off. The women and children of Bylund send their regards. Un took Gorm's other eye. He dropped the poisoned blade, clutching at his face and screaming. Un drew her spear back once more, then plunged it between his ribs and into his black heart. Gorm slipped off the spear and crumpled on the ground, his breath slowly fading. Un knew he deserved much worse, but the flames would not halt, even for vengeance. This would have to be enough. Un turned away in disgust, then spotted Gorm's blade. It wasn't his usual style of sword. Un bent to retrieve it, turned it over in the light. The greenish hue coating cold steel made her suspicious.
What's this? Poisoned. This blade looks familiar.
But there was no time to consider. Un slipped the sword into her belt and walked away. Down the muddy road, Trivka saw her coming away from the fight with Gorm, miraculously unharmed. He should have known Gorm wouldn't be up to the task.
The fool couldn't even get in one good strike. Eric!
Trivka signalled to a nearby archer. Eric could be trusted.
Yes, sir.
Do it!
The man's heart skipped a beat, but he'd pledged himself to Trivka and must earn his reward with obedience. He drew one of the poisoned arrows he'd prepared for this eventuality. Eric knocked the arrow. Poison gleamed on its tip and the bowstring creaked as it was drawn. He let the arrow fly. Un's heart screamed in warning. A premonition of betrayal, not quick enough. As she turned, the arrow caught her in the shoulder. Better than her throat, but it still hurt like hell. Down the road, the archer looked to his new lord.
Again.
The voices of other men were quickly approaching. Trivka couldn't let them see the fate of their mistress, for he knew that many were still faithful to Un.
Hold! The others should not see this. The poison will do its work. Come. Leave her to die in peace.
As they left, Trivka cast one last look back at his former friend and leader. She had already begun to writhe in pain from the toxin. It wouldn't be long. It was all regrettable, but it had to be done. Trivka tore his eyes from Un and left. Un reeled with nausea and confusion as the toxin took hold.
What is this? A toxin. Cowards. Swine.
She struggled to stand. The world spun around her, all sound warbly and distorted. Whatever toxin this was, it was making quick work of her.
Trivka, help me!
But her friend didn't come. The world burned around Un as her blood burned inside.
I have to get away. Why does no one come for me?
Trivka stabbed a dying Viking, ending his suffering on the nearby shore.
Leave no stragglers. Get the loot to the ships. Let the place burn!
Where's Ud?
Trivka put a heavy hand on the man's shoulder to comfort him.
Skinning Gorm alive, no doubt. She will come. She will not want us to waste time.
All right.
The Viking obeys Un's second, heading for the ships. Others worked to finish carting off the hurriedly gathered loot. A handful of warriors flanked Trivka, surveying the destruction as they watched for signs of Un.
Un, why would she linger? Gorm must have harmed her.
Agreed. Let's go find her.
Un's faithful men began to move back toward the burning camp. Behind them, Trivka signalled to two of his own men.
Kill them!
They stab their former comrades in the back, and the men go down, screaming.
If anyone asks, we saw Gorm stab her. Un perished in the flames.
So it was.